it hit me. I am an addict. Like I really am an addict. And then once I was able to realize that I needed to be there, right, then it all changed for me. And then I wanted to embrace it a little bit more.
Hey, welcome to Unseen Atlanta, an Atlanta Mission podcast, where we shine the light on some of the city's toughest issues. We do this by sharing true stories from real people who've experienced homelessness and addiction. We also talk to subject matter experts who give some context to some of these issues. I'm Rachel Reynolds, I'm your host.
And I'm Jonathan Miller, your co-host.
And today we have just the best interview. He's one of my favorite people.
He was amazing.
Oh my gosh. You can't help but love Matt. Matt is a valued member of the Atlanta Mission community. He's on staff here, but he also went through recovery up at the Potter's house, and he's just the brightest light.
He's so much fun.
I know. I feel like we could have talked to him all day.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to want to be besties with Matt. The really fun thing about the interview today is that in true Matt fashion, he is also his own subject matter expert. So you'll get a full episode of Matt, both his story and him talking about what it's like to live in recovery. So take a listen. We want to talk about your story a little bit. So take us back. Where are you from?
I grew up in Dublin, Georgia, which is a small town in central Georgia, in between Macon and Savannah is the best way to describe it.
Okay.
Very conservative, grew up with the same people, went to school with the same people from kindergarten all the way through high school graduation.
Everybody knows everybody.
Everybody knows everybody. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Siblings?
An older brother.
Okay.
Older brother who's 4 years older than me.
Were your mom and dad together?
Yes. My parents have been married all of my life.
Really? Still?
And are still married today. They're in their 80s. Now, they, ironically, were both married before I came along.
Okay.
Okay. They were both divorced and then came together.
And then they had you.
And had me and my older brother.
Okay.
Who was 4 years older than me.
Were there kids from the other marriages?
There were.
Okay, so you have step siblings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about growing up. What was it like? Small town?
For me, it was, it was a safe place to grow up. And I have good memories of childhood. I wasn't one who, had lots of crazy things or trauma happening to me as a child. I think that probably what I was dealing with was identity, and who I was. And of course, as a child, you don't necessarily start asking yourself about your, identity, whether it's sexual or gender or whatever, when you're, preteen. But there's definitely something about you that makes you think, I think I'm different, Of course, now that I look back on it, I know that as soon as I open my mouth, people are going to probably pinpoint me or make a judgment about who I am. And so I really, as a child, had the same issue. And because I was very self-conscious about it, then I tried very hard to hide all of that. And so at a very young age, I feel like I started putting on masks and wearing different masks to see which one may fit. And they would change according to who I was
supposed to be.
Or who I was with. If I'm with this group, then I have this mask.
Gotcha.
And if I'm at church, I have this mask. And if I'm at a party, I have this mask. And if I'm at my parents, then I have this mask.
Were you ever in a environment where you could just be you? Or was that not an option?
Not really. And I'll be honest, there was probably a time where I didn't want to be me. And really didn't like being me. And I really didn't even know who me was because I'd spent so much time trying to be someone else. And I think a lot of that just had to do with not having an understanding of who I was and not having a space to talk about who I was. Because when I came along, we didn't even have school counselors at my school. And if you did, they were just there to help you apply for college or something. It wasn't
Sure.
You weren't talking about your feelings.
Exactly. Or no one ever said, hey, Matt, how do you feel? Or
Yeah.
what are you experiencing? Or what are you going through? I wanted to put on that smile and be good and be, of service to others. But I think I spent so much time trying to serve others that I didn't spend any time learning who I was or serving myself in any way. And so because of that, I really feel like I started to go down the path of using substances, right?
Yeah, how did it start?
I think it started when I was a teenager and I had some friends in the neighborhood. I did have a handful of friends. And so there was an opportunity to drink. And so we did. And, and I think that the reason that I thought that it was fun was because for the first time, I learned that when someone is under the influence of a substance, whether it's alcohol or another drug, I saw some boundaries come down. You know the scenario. People get drunk. Oh, my God, I love you. Oh, you're so amazing, blah, blah, blah. Well, I liked hearing that because I hadn't heard that.
It made you feel accepted.
It made me feel absolutely accepted. And so the only way to continue that was, let's continue the party, right? And so I just wanted to party. And it hurt me in a lot of ways. I mean, I didn't feel like at the time that there was anything wrong with it because, you just feel like everyone else is doing it, but everyone else really wasn't doing it, not 24/7 like I was. And so then, as I got into my later 20s and hadn't really accomplished a whole lot, I started realizing that, that something was wrong and why couldn't I complete anything that I started? And so as you approach 30, you kind of go into that crisis mode. And so you think you're going to make all these changes in your life. And so you quit your job and you get another job and you move to a different city and you do this and you do that. But where you go, there you are. And so I
knock, knock, knock.
Yes, hello, here I am. Yeah. And I continued the same patterns, right? Just in a different way.
So had you moved at this time?
I did move to Milledgeville.
Okay.
And I had lived in Atlanta for a brief time,
Okay.
but then I moved a lot because I was always not necessarily like a long way away from home, but just, I'd do something for a couple of years, get tired of it, go to something else, get tired of it, move to Atlanta, work there, okay, I'm tired of it, so I'd leave. And all this time, I wouldn't say that I was in full-blown addiction, but I was definitely, social scenes were always a huge part of my life, and I feel like everything else revolved around it because it grew out of that need to want to be loved, right? To want to be accepted, and I wanted that so very badly. I've got a job, ironically, in church music. I'm a musician. Music was probably the only way that I ever found a place and a space where I could be me. So when you asked me the question earlier, was there ever a place where you could be me? Yes, when I was sitting at the keyboard and no one was around and I could just enjoy that. Because I'm one of those people that just sit down and just play, when no one's there.
That resonates so much with me.
Does it?
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, it was that space. And so when you grow up in a small town, really the only place that you have that you can show that talent is at church.
Yeah.
Right? Because we didn't really have a great arts program in my public school. Everything revolved around football. So anyway, I did major in music, and you would have thought that when I'd gone to college that I would have found this group of people to embrace me and me to embrace them. But I think a lot of the reason that didn't happen was because I still didn't like myself. And so I really didn't want the people that probably would have embraced me, I didn't want them to embrace me, and again, still felt like I had to do whatever I needed to do to not be me,
To mask it.
Absolutely. Let's mask it. And partying was a great way to do that. So I went on to have a career in church music and would do well, but then I would make stupid decisions when I was high or drunk. and then that would cost me my job. And
What a dual life you were leading.
it was absolutely a double life, absolutely a double life. But you have to understand that there was a time in my life when I was younger that like I had already decided I will go to my grave with my sexual identity. I will go to my grave with this. And
So, and you decided that because you never thought anyone would accept it.
Right. It just never, like, for me, it would have just been eternal ruin. And so when you ask me what kind of environment I grew up in, that would have been that environment, just where you just felt like you couldn't share those things because it would damage you beyond repair. And I already felt like I was damaged enough, right? But I can control it by keeping it a secret, even though it really wasn't a secret, is the ironic thing about all of it. So it's a lot of wasted effort, okay? A lot of wasted effort. Like I look back and I reflect on my life and I think, where there could have been different turns, right, that could have made a difference, but I can't rewind that and go back and change any of it. So I can only just go forward from wherever I'm at. So there was a point in my life where I was in full-blown addiction.
Yeah.
I had moved from just drinking and partying on the weekends and then throwing some cocaine at the parties on the weekends to a friend of mine introduced me to methamphetamine. And there was a time in my life just like I would never utter the words homosexual. I would never utter the word methamphetamine because that would mean that I was a meth addict. Just like if I had said homosexual, then I would have been gay.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say those things, right?
Once you say it was too hard to face.
Right. So didn't want to say it. So it was always abbreviated with a different name, a different word, a nickname. And so obviously when you're dealing with illegal substances and, it literally changes you into a completely different person, like a person that you wouldn't recognize. If I were on drugs sitting in front of you right now, you wouldn't recognize me. I mean, I might look the same to you, but my actions would be the complete opposite of what they are right now. And so it transforms you. It lies to you. It tells you that you're better. It tells you that you're accepted. It tells you that you're loved. And the reality is that none of that is happening. You are failing at everything you're doing. You're losing your job. You have no sense of responsibility. You're isolating yourself from the people that really do love and care about you. And so you're in self-destruct mode at that point. And so luckily...
Yeah, how'd you find out about Potter's house?
I got arrested, like a lot of drug addicts do.
You're the first... Hey, that's not a sentence we hear a lot. Luckily, I got arrested.
That's right. I got arrested.
You heard it here first.
I got arrested. I know it's a shocker. But I was arrested and got a possession charge. And then
what year was this?
2000. And so this would have been like January of 2016. Okay. At the time, I had decided that it was I had a brilliant idea that I would just live like a gypsy. Okay, and
that sounds like a great idea.
I bought this like clothing bar to go across the back of my back seat, and all my clothes were there.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I just rode around from town to town. Yeah, and just found a hotel here or a hookup there, or maybe sometimes I'd just fall asleep in a parking space at a gas station.
Yeah.
You never knew what life was going to bring you, and I really thought in my mind that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life and that there was nothing wrong with it. Like in my head, I was convinced of that.
Yeah.
And I'm just sharing that, not because I'm proud of it or that I just am trying to share a crazy story. I want you to know that that is the level of lies that you are convincing yourself of when you're under the influence of methamphetamine. I was never a big, now there's some addicts who use gobs of different drugs. I was never one of those people. I've never taken pills. I've never smoked a lot of pot. I didn't like it. I always liked things that do what? Woo! Speed you up.
Yeah.
Right. And so that would be the epitome of that.
January, you find yourself in jail.
Found myself in jail. Had to call the church where I was working and say, I'm so sorry I won't be there. I'm in jail.
Oh, you told them.
Yeah.
Hey,
Amen.
you're an
Hallelujah.
honest guy.
Have a great Easter. Bye-bye.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
He is
You need
risen.
to find a pianist for Easter. Yes. I will be playing tunes in the kitchen here at the
Jailhouse.
Toombs County Detention
Okay.
Center. It was crazy. When I was arrested, I had a detective, and he said, you just don't go through life and never have any, criminal activity, and then all of a sudden in your 40s you're being arrested. So you need to get help. Like, he was very firm with me and said, you need to get help. And of course, when he told me that, in my mind, I was like, you need to get help.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Like, who are you?
You're the problem.
You're the problem, not me.
Yeah.
Let me go and let me live my life. Let me go to another hotel. So anyway, but I will always look back at that experience, because that was probably the first time in a decade that I had not had drugs for an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have a few days that I would go without drugs. It would only be because I couldn't get in touch with my dealer or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't like by choice, right? And so, yeah, it like lifted the veil. And then, as y'all could imagine, when that veil is lifted, and you're just like, where in the world am I? And what happened to me? And what year is it? And you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like, where's all this time gone? I mean, it really was it was that kind of moment. And so, of course, I immediately felt shame and embarrassment and all of the things that I was probably used to dealing with already, And so I, of course, was in touch with my parents. We were writing letters, and they heard about the Potter's House.
Okay.
So my mom brought me an application, and I filled it out and mailed it in. And
were you sort of like, I got to do this for my mom? You didn't really want to do it, or what were you feeling?
I wanted to do it, but definitely on my terms. I wanted the shortest program that I could get.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, I think, there was that part of me that was like, yeah, I need to make some changes. But, I was still in that mode of, I really am not doing anything wrong. I had sort of moved. When you isolate enough, you just begin to think that none of your behaviors have an effect on other people when they do.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what makes it easy to isolate, right? Because you absolve yourself from responsibility of what your actions are doing to others, right? So I never would think about that. I did go in front of a judge. He did approve for me to go to the Potter's House. It was not my first choice because it was the longest of the programs.
Yeah, of course.
But at this point in the game, I'm 42 years old.
Yeah.
I'm unemployed.
Yep.
My parents should not have to be responsible for paying for rehabs for me. And it's up to me. So what they did was they promised to get me to the Potter's House, which they did. And when I got out of the car, they said, if you get kicked out, don't call us. And so I knew that.
How did that feel, hearing those words?
That was an eye-opener, because I knew that they meant what they said. Because when I'd gotten locked up, my first response was, well, let me call my parents and get them to call a lawyer and I'll be out of here. And my parents were like, no, we're not going to do that. You're just going to sit there until your court date. And so I sat in jail for 3 or 4 months. And all of that was an eye-opening experience for me. But I'll tell you what it did teach me. It's not all sad. When I was there, of course, I was asked to work in the kitchen. And so I did go work in the kitchen, and I became real good friends with the 2 ladies that were the cooks. It taught me a lot there. It taught me a lot about that culture. And I was there through an Easter, as I told you. And so got to cook this big meal for everyone for Easter. And what it really taught me was that no matter what circumstances you're in, right, you can always find a way to make it better.
Yeah.
And so I sort of promised myself that if I were to get out and I go to rehab, that I would do whatever I could to make it better. When I arrived at the Potter's House, for those of you who've never been, I was in the car and we drove over this railroad track, and there are these 2 little rundown houses on the right. And when I got there was a raggedy Confederate flag, waving.
You were like,
and
so great.
I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was like, oh my God. They're taking me. It's going to be like Deliverance here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was envisioning the worst ever. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then I kept looking for Glenda. She never came. But then after you drive a little ways, you'll go around a curve. And when you go around that curve, there are 3 crosses in a field. And I remember seeing those 3 crosses and then going around the curve, and it just opened up into this like beautiful farm. And it was like the biggest sigh of relief, like, thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. And so I did. I went, and of course I was scared. I'd never been to a rehab before, and got dropped off, and I got in. And you know, for anyone that's been locked up, when you've sat around watching bad TV and eating bologna sandwiches every day, anything's an improvement.
Yeah.
Anything's an improvement. Just the things that, like, I remember sitting when I was locked up, making a list of things that I couldn't do anymore. And there's simple things like turn a light on and off. You can't do that. You can't find a quiet space. You can't. There are no chairs like this that you can lean back in and relax. You know, it's just metal beds and metal stools, or you know, and all of your rights are taken away from you essentially. And so, yeah, that's a really lonely feeling. So,
what was it like when you get there?
So, like the Ritz-Carlton.
Oh.
Yeah, compared to where I had been.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. I mean, because, you know,
that's something else you heard first.
We're giving
here.
a vet. That's right.
It's a Ritz-Carlton.
It's a Ritz-Carlton in comparison. It was. Because, like, driving down, again, it was beautiful. And then you pull up, and the first thing you see is a little chapel, you know, in the building. And you go in, and you're given a bed. I was just so glad to have a bed with a light that turned on and off, right? And
it's those little things.
It's those little things. And I was, like, excited to go through a food line where I had, like, a big plate of food, and it changed all the time. It wasn't just bologna sandwiches and potato chips, you know?
Yeah.
And we were given 3 meals a day. And I can tell you the most amazing part about all of this, and I come from a background of, you know, my family's pretty middle class, you know, just middle of the road. We had what we needed, not always what we wanted. But I just couldn't believe that any of that was being offered at no charge to me. Like, I thought, when I was there, I was like, I'm going to have a big bill when I leave here, you know, and I didn't. Because there's no fee. All you had to have was just a desire to change your life, right? And so I was no stranger to God. I worked for the church, right? But I just was never honest with him. And so when I got to the Potter's house, and I had challenges like every client has. I think the first challenge was I had to admit to myself that I was an addict. That was very difficult for me to do because, you know, like I said, you don't say the word meth. You don't say the word that, you know, I'd already sort of in my mind, like, I'm not an addict. I'm special. I hit a roadblock and I just got to get over it. You know, I got to learn how to maneuver around the obstacle, but I'm going to be okay. But then when I sat in class and in group sharing sessions, I would listen to other guys talk about the same circumstances that they have been in, the same behaviors, just crazy stuff like being up all night and going to Walmart at 3 a.m. Like, that sounds crazy to everybody else, but to someone who's been up for several days on drugs, for whatever reason, going to Walmart at 3 or 4 a.m. is fascinating. And many of us do it. Like, it's crazy, the habits that we all had. And so as I would listen to the level of criminal behavior and lack of responsibility, lack of just caring for anyone else, or it hit me. I am an addict. You know, like, I really am an addict. And then once I was able to realize that I needed to be there, right, then it all changed for me. And then I wanted to embrace it a little bit more. And so,
did you start to confront who you were? Yes.
And I'll tell you why that was easier to do.
Okay.
Because I was not at home in my hometown.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
And I really didn't know anyone there, right? And so I was in an environment where it's now or never, you know? So either I can, like, say who I am and just, and like I told y'all, like, I know most people would know anyway, just from my mannerisms and the way I speak. That's probably why I spent so much time trying to divert the attention from that, if that makes any sense. And so partying was a good way to do it. But, you know, me coming out, I think, was really more to me than it was to others. I think everyone else really already knew. And it was just, I didn't want to.
And did that happen when you were at Potter's house?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Because
Did it feel good to yourself?
It did, because, I had people that were younger than me, right? Because there are a lot of different aged groups there, right? And so there's a lot of beauty in being around people that are in different, come from different generations. Yeah, because, like the guys who are at the Potter's house, say like right now, for example, they're in their 20s and they have a whole different concept than the people that are me in I'm now in my 50s, and it was a much different time then.
Yeah,
right?
no, it was.
I mean, there's so much. I mean, the older you get and the more you look back, you just see how much has changed. But it's also very exciting, because there's a lot of good change that's happened over the last few decades, and so I just became hopeful, and what I sort of experienced there was I could be me. Yeah. I could have friends.
Did you feel accepted?
I did. I mean, you'll always have those people that have a problem with you, but that has nothing to do with sexuality. That's just life. That's life. I mean, you're never going to get along with. Yeah. And that's a lesson I had to learn too. Like Matt, there are going to be people in this world that don't like you, and there are people in this world that you're not going to like, and it's going to be okay. Everybody doesn't have to be. Everybody doesn't have to accept. Everybody doesn't have to love. Everybody doesn't have to think like you do. In fact, I'd say that my mind shifted more to embracing all kinds of diversity, right? Yeah. Because I had never been around people who maybe had grown up in an environment where their parents were addicts or, and they sort of had to fend for themselves. I mean, I'd never been around that before. Or people that had come right off of the streets, that were living in tents and brought in their sleeping bags. I mean, so when I say diversity, I mean, we're not talking about, we're talking about diversity on every level, whether it's color, whether it's socioeconomic level, educational levels, behavioral levels. But I don't know, I loved all of that, right? Mm-hmm. So I could grow from that because it made me realize that there's no such thing as normal. Normal's a myth, right?
Yeah. Normal's boring.
Normal's absolutely boring. And it also made me realize, to your point, normal's the last thing that I want to be. Mm-hmm. I don't even want to strive for normal. Mm-hmm. I just want to strive for authentic, and I want to strive for honest with others, obviously, but also with myself, and be able to recognize that when I am struggling with something or upset about something or I'm hurting over something, that that I need to process that with someone, a professional. A lot of times it's with your friends, but it's important not to bottle up, because I bottled up so much, and I really believe that my drug use grew out of trying to just let it all out of the bottle. And it was the only way I could figure out how to do it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Okay, so you're at the Potter's house. And tell us a little bit. You went through the program and then you stayed?
And then I did the leadership. They have like a junior leadership program there where you can have extra time. And truly the reason that I did it was because I wanted more time. I've never been in a relationship, right? I don't have children. I did not have a job or career or life that I needed to get back to. And so I thought, why not spend as much time here as I can to get me prepared for when I know inevitably that I will leave. And so I stayed on, completed that. At that time, that was an additional year in your program. And then after that, I lived at New Start, which is our transitional living, and worked with Ricky Hall there, who's become a colleague and a great friend of mine. Yeah. Ricky was important to me because Ricky was when you grow up in a small town, and you're gay and you're trying to find someone that you can, like a male role model, right? Yeah. It's very difficult. Okay. Ricky was special to me because when I was in my program, he was one of those staff people that sat me down and just got to know me. And like even now, like if I do even little things, like if I'm going to buy a car or change jobs or whatever, I talk to Ricky and he'll go through all of the things that like a father would go through with you, and he helps me to see things from different perspectives. So I just wanted to share that because that's a connection that I didn't have with a whole lot of men. And I've always been very appreciative of him for allowing me that opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
to
special.
have that.
That is
Yeah,
special.
it's very
Really
super special
special.
for me.
Ricky's amazing.
He is. I love him. And so, anyway, I was working with him at New Start, and I stayed there a couple of years. And then I knew, Matt, you got to get back to your life. You gotta start over. And there's a lot of fear
Yeah.
in starting over, right?
Yeah.
Because I literally was off the grid for 2 years.
Yeah.
Haven't communicated with anyone but my mother and some people that knew that I was there that were writing to me. And so I decided that I would get a job. And all I really knew was music. And so I went on a website, and there was a little Methodist church about 45 minutes away that needed a pianist. And so I thought, well, I could do this, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just playing. That's all I have to do. So I called the pastor. Her name was Leah. And I said, I see where you got this ad. I know how churches work. They're going to run through committees. I'm just fresh out of rehab, and I really don't want to go in front of a firing squad
100%.
for this job. So I'm glad to talk to you about it. You can tell me what you think. And then if you don't think that it's going to work, or if you think your people are going to have a problem with it, then we don't have to move forward with it. So I went to the church, played. She said, can you wait here for 5 minutes? And then they walked out, met, in less than 5. She was like, you're hired.
Wow.
How did that
And
make
so-
you feel?
So I had a new job. And so I was like, it made me feel really good because when I was locked up, I don't know, I never thought that I would be employed by a church again. I thought that I had sacrificed all of that, And so that was a kind of a spark, right? Because it was like, okay, maybe I can make this work. And so this was a very small church, probably averages 35 people, 30, 35 on a Sunday. But they were the most loving people to me. And I could go in and, play pretty much whatever, my heart felt like playing. And they were always supportive and encouraging and just loved me. And I needed that, again, from a group of people that I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And so after that, I was in program with a guy whose mother owned a flower shop in Athens. And she called him one day and she said, hey, I've just had someone quit. Do you know anyone that might be willing to help
I
me?
have just
And he
the
said,
person.
Mama, I know exactly who you need. And so I went. And again, it started real small. I was just delivering, which is all I wanted to do. I didn't want any FaceTime with anybody. I didn't, I was still sort of trying to figure things out. So I was hired. So now I'm, after a few months, I'm learning how to design flowers. I don't know, I'm going to throw this in as an aside. The Flowerland has a marquee sign out front, and it's one of the few marquee signs that is really high, and it's at the corner of Prince and Millage Avenue.
Yep.
So in Athens, that's a huge intersection. And I used to look at the sign before I ever worked there and think, gosh, they never put anything good on that sign. And so February, I was like, let's put Valentine's Day gives me a heart on.
Okay.
And they put it up. And it was a hit.
smash
And I
hit.
actually have had like a few little articles written about that. And
That.
and so all of a sudden, things started brightening up. And so I moved out of the Potter's house in January of 2020. The people that I work for at Flowerland, Jan is the lady's name. She and her sister Deborah own Flowerland together. They became like parents. I was able to find a place to live and start over, right?
That's
and
amazing.
So, yeah, it was great.
We don't actually have a subject matter expert for this episode.
Or we do.
We do.
But he's sitting right here.
He's sitting right here.
Oh my gosh, it's me. Is it me?
Put that on a marquee sign.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So
That's
I'm
the
going to be my
subject.
own.
You're going to be your own.
My own. Okay.
So, yes, we wanted to share with you guys. This is such a full circle moment. We're going to share with you a little bit. We kind of ended the story with Matt being at Flowerland, and we're going to transition and talk a little bit about what Matt is doing now and how he's giving back to Atlanta Mission, as well as what it's like living in long-term recovery.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
welcome back, Matt.
Oh, it is so good to be back with you. I mean, long time no see.
Long time no
Should we
see.
like change clothes real quick, just so it looks like it's a different day?
Just switch off.
I would have brought it.
Switch
I have them hanging in the back of my car. Do you want me to go get some? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Still.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Okay, so 2020, you are in Flowerland. Your name is in lights on the marquee sign.
That's right. Newspaper articles are coming out left and right.
Man,
The Kardashians
Broadway's
are
calling.
That's right. That's right.
So what brought you back? Matt now works at Atlanta Mission. Tell us a little bit about what brought you back to the mission.
Well, I really feel like I never left the mission because even when I had moved out, Ricky continued to have his weekly meetings at New Start, the transitional living facility. And so I was just so used to being in that routine of helping him that I was like, Ricky, if you want, I can still come back on Tuesdays and help you, with your meeting. And so I would come back every week. So I saw him. And then COVID came along, right? Shortly after I moved out. So there was several months where we were all in solitude. And that was a big growth moment for me too, because what that made me realize was that, Matt, it's okay if you don't have a social invitation to do something every single day,
Okay.
because that's sort of how I used to define myself was how much I am wanted, like how much do people really want me around? And if it wasn't 24/7, then I was not happy about it.
So how do you define yourself now?
Oh my gosh. I look forward to going home and binging on a new show. Order a pizza. I mean, just spend some time.
You're so
With
comfortable with yourself.
Exactly. You don't have to be out and about. I don't have to be at a bar. I don't have to be at a party. I don't have to be at some fabulous restaurant 24/7. I mean, yes, all those things are fun and I still enjoy them, but they're not as constant as they were. And so
So
COVID
hits.
taught me all that, right? It taught me that it's okay to be with me because that was the only person I was with.
It was like another step in your recovery journey of learning about that and then actually having to practice it.
Absolutely. And we also live in a time where, communication is so easy. I mean, it's the easiest. I mean, we have FaceTime and we can call and we have so many forms of communicating with one another that it really doesn't take as much effort, right, to do that. And so, life continued as it did for you all. And then I continued to work at Flowerland and then Adrian Bumpers, who was also very influential for me during my time as a client. Adrian also was a staff member, and she was just one of those people that I would frequently drop by her office and have conversations with that I knew I could be myself with. I knew I would never face any judgment, and all she ever offered me was love. So flash forward to 2022, Adrian is now the director, right, of the Potter's House. And so she called and said, hey, we have this position, and I think that you'd be great. And if you have any interest in applying, please do so. Well, I mean, having been a client at Atlanta Mission and having lived there for several years, I knew that it was a fantastic organization. And so, of course, I was anxious to apply and become a part of the team.
How did you feel when Adrian called you and said, hey, we want you back?
I was super excited. I mean, I want to say that I was shocked, but I mean, I really wasn't. I mean, she and I always had a great relationship. I was excited. I mean, I was excited to go, to be able to go back and continue to sort of help others in their, find their way and find their road.
So what do you do?
Yeah, what are you doing now?
Well, when I took the job, I was a CLA, which is a community living assistant. So I worked in community living and the bulk of my responsibility was medical needs. So the Potter's House is not a medical facility, so we don't have hired staff on hand, nurses or doctors. But we do have a wonderful community in Athens that offers so much to people that need health care that can't afford it or don't have insurance or the money. We have some partnerships with those organizations. They come out and help our clients with their medical needs, and it's anything from eyeglasses to we've done screens,
new teeth.
Yeah. We do
I
have
know.
some dental options.
Yes.
We do.
But now you're not doing that anymore.
Not doing that anymore. The campus administrator role opened up, and I like to be the one and only, right? And so there's only one and only
Does he?
campus administrator, and so I applied for that position.
That was an easy shoo-in.
And so now I report directly to Adrian. So,
So what is it like? What is it like living in long-term recovery while working in recovery?
the advice that I give to people who are struggling right now with addiction or they're very early in their recovery is the first thing that you have to do is learn to love yourself. I know that that sounds so cliche, and I don't mean just love yourself like, oh, I love me. I mean like really love who you are. Love the creation that God created you to be, you know, and love and even the flaws that you have. Like learn to love those because that's what makes you you.
It's so interesting because we've interviewed a number of clients and have heard a lot of people's stories, and that's a big part.
Yeah.
It's
They all
always
talk
a
about
big
it.
part. Because I've always said, here are my thoughts on addiction. As I shared earlier, and I'll recap it. I think that people that are in addiction are always struggling from some pain, some trauma, from something that happened in their lives. And because no one wakes up and says, you know what, Mom, I think I want to be an addict. I think
Yeah.
it would be great for me to be. No one ever sets out to become an addict. Our road just leads us there, and a lot of time it's just the damage that we feel from what, you know, for me it was, you know, not loving myself or feeling that I was unloved, and so I sought it, you know, in different ways, and I couldn't find it. So, you know, rather than deal with the pain of that, I would just numb it.
Yeah.
Right, and then I would use partying and socializing as my cover. But at the root of all that, I just wanted to be loved.
You just want to be loved.
Just wanted to be loved. And I think most addicts are really, they're probably right there with
Yeah.
me. You know,
Well, I think most people.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, in a very different way, right? We all deal with that
Yeah.
in different ways, right? One of the things, so one of my favorite movies is The Color Purple. I'm sure y'all have seen that. And the whole idea behind The Color Purple is she says, how can you walk by a field full of purple and not give it attention, right? Not give it love, not give it the respect that it deserves. That's how we're the color purple. How could anybody walk by us, right, and not stop for a moment to say, Rachel, you're an amazing human, you know, and
Yeah.
so you may not know it,
Yes.
but we all need to hear that.
Well, and that's one of the
all need
reasons
to-
we are calling it Unseen Atlanta is for that very reason of we all want to be seen. We all want to be known. We all want to be loved. And
That's
I think
right.
you put it so eloquently. Like when we walk by people, are we seeing them?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
And are we
convicting.
loving them no matter what?
No matter what.
Yeah.
So I think that you'll always find in addicts a lack of love. And because of it, they probably have a lack of love for themselves, right? Because their first thing and most people aren't vulnerable enough to admit it.
Yeah.
But the truth is that we find ourselves to be inadequate. And so the only way that we can deal with that inadequacy is to numb it.
Yeah.
So for me, and what the Potter's House did for me, was that it gave me the love for myself that I needed to be able to move on with my life, right? And not in perfection, because
No,
I'm
totally.
far
Yeah.
from perfect. I think so you have to learn to love yourself. Another way that you're going to do that is through, obviously, a strong spiritual connection.
Yeah.
We do have to, it's again, if you grow up in the church and you sing Jesus loves all the little children, you know, the idea is that, well, you know, he loves us all. Well, we don't all feel that.
Yeah.
You know, the red, yellow, and the red and yellow ones.
black and
That's
white,
right.
they are precious
Right.
in His sight.
Like, so.
I knew I had to throw a song in there.
You did. Jesus loves the little children of the world.
Everybody.
There you go. But I can guarantee you that the red and yellows would have disagreed with that. Right? I mean, it's a great thought, right? But do we really love red, yellow, black, and white, right? And so, but God does. He does. He does. And so, and of course, one of the things that you will do in our recovery program is that you're going to build that relationship with God. You're going to have, it's actually built into your schedule, a quiet time. A daily quiet time is built into your schedule. And so you have the opportunity to pray, meditate, read your devotional, but we feel that is so important. That's why it's given that, right? And because it's essential. My last big one is surround yourself with good people. If you surround yourself with good people, you have so much more of a chance to make it. And when I say good people, I think that sometimes we like to surround ourselves with who we think that we'll look good with. And that is not surrounding yourself with good people. I'm very fortunate that God has blessed me with people in my life who really, I can honestly say, just love me, just for being me. Some of them are even here. Right. And so, and that's important, right? It's important that you can be yourself, and it's 100% authentic self, and have those people still at your side, right? There's no conditions behind it, and it is possible. So continue to surround yourself with good people.
Love
yourself and get grounded in your faith. And those are my biggies for living life in recovery.
I'm really curious. I've been wanting to ask this question. I know we're about to wrap up too, but if you don't mind sharing, how has your faith evolved over the course of your life to where you are now? It sounds like it's been a big part of your journey.
Well, church and faith was always big for me. My mom was a church pianist, right? And so
it's in your blood.
It's in my blood, right? And so I grew up, sitting on the piano bench next to her and singing Sunday school songs. And like some of my earliest memories of playing were like, I remember one Sunday, you go to Sunday school, and when I grew up, they would always sing like Sunday school songs like 5 or 10 minutes before you would break up and go to your classes. And so I can remember the lady that playing the piano wasn't there that day. And, I was like 6 years old. I can do it.
Oh, of course.
And so I would roll up and do it, and so
no big deal.
So I grew up with that. But as I said, church was important to me for spiritual reasons, but it was also important to me because it was where I felt like I could shine. It was the only opportunity that I had to like display, well, this is what God did for me.
This is your gift,
and I always knew that, and I always knew that music was a gift, and I always took it seriously. I don't know, from a faith perspective, I grew up in a time where everyone basically said, you're doomed. And so that was another reason why I would never admit to who I was, because who wants for people to sit around and say, well, you either do this or you're going to burn in hell. I mean, I just that thought terrified me. And so, you live in that terror too. It's like, well, I'm not going to tell anybody because, maybe I'm not. And then you start praying to not be. And then that just turns into a whole nother topic. But but where it evolved is that life's experiences and the people that God has blessed me with, and the opportunities and the talents that God has blessed me with, I know that He loves me. Red, yellow, black, and white. I'm precious in His sight. And I don't believe that I'm going to burn in hell for it. I really don't. I believe I'm going to sing along with all the other angels.
We're going to be in the choir together.
We're going to be in the choir, and we're picking the costumes.
I'm not doing a choir robe. You better believe there is not going to be a collar on that thing.
It's going to be
something nice. Well, I feel like this is thank you so much for sharing your story, Matt.
It's my pleasure.
I think that your story is not just a story for someone who's dealing with addiction. It's a story for everybody.
Well,
because at the end of the day, we all want to feel loved. We all want to feel accepted. And I think it's a story of reflection for us of how are we living that out? How are we living our authentic selves?
Right.
How are we? I think you ooze authenticity.
Yeah.
And I hope that everybody who's listening can feel that, can see that. I also want you to know, and I hope you know this deeply, how much you are loved and adored in the Atlanta Mission community.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You are. You can't say your name without people talking about how much they love you. So
Well, I appreciate
I think we are lucky that you are here
Well, I'm
Yeah.
lucky.
because you have brought so much joy and so much love to our mission. So
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you.
all for listening today. We hope you enjoyed Matt's story. We love that it was a special episode where he can be his own subject matter expert. And I'm really happy we got a little song in there.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So stay tuned for our next episode, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and engaging with these challenging yet vital conversations about mental health, addiction, homelessness, and trauma in our city. Facing these issues head on is how we ignite real transformation in Atlanta. Thank you to our season sponsor, the Scott Pryor Law Group. The transformation you've heard wouldn't be possible without incredible partners like the Scott Pryor Law Group, personal injury and accident attorneys. Their compassion and dedication to our community fuel stories of transformation just like these. If you are injured in a semi-truck or car accident, call the Scott Pryor Law Group. As a U.S. Marine, we fight and win for you. Our clients are family for life. We handle all types of injuries. You focus on healing, and we handle the rest. Now, if today's episode inspired you to take the next step, we would love to invite you to join the work that God is doing here. There are two really impactful ways for you to get involved. First, you can give financially to help us continue the work you heard about today. Second, you can volunteer your time by serving at one of our campuses. You can find all the ways to give and get involved at atlantamission.org. Thank you again for being part of this journey. Please join us next time as we uncover more powerful stories of hope and transformation.